This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Ping.fm, and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio.
Welcome to What the Health, an independent approach to your health span. Have you noticed how our healthcare system may not have your best interest in mind? Join Dr. Eckel in this fun and sometimes disturbing exploration of the state of healthcare and what it means for you. Now, here's your host, Dr. Eckel.
Welcome back, everybody. Dr. Greg Eckel, and this is What the Health. Our topic today is break free from chronic pain to achieve high performance. And you know him and love him. Dr. Brian Wohlfert has been on What the Health before. He's helped thousands of people upgrade their health, energy, and performance in his multiple wellness, chiropractic, and nutrition clinics, and online. So he is the co-creator of the Superhuman Brain Masterclass, the Leaky Brain Summit, and they reached over 100,000 people worldwide. And in those virtual events, Dr. Ryan brought together the world's top neuroscientists, brain researchers, and doctors to share solutions for brain health, performance, and longevity. And we were talking before we got on the show. First off, Dr. Ryan, thank you so much for coming back on to What the Health.
Dr. Greg, you're amazing. Anything I can do to provide value for you and your listeners, for sure.
I love it. And that is why I created this platform, What the Health, is, you know, pain is such a driving motivator. I mean, it takes us out of our creativity, out of our excellence. And I mean, quite frankly, it just sucks, right? And so you have been helping people for a long time. And this is a big one of the breaking free from chronic pain to achieve high performance. And, you know, you and I are very well aligned in helping people, you know, live their greatest lives, get into their creativity. And that pain is one of those things. It's chronic. It's almost accepted in our culture that somebody's going to have it as they age. So let me open it up to you on, you know, what you're learning on this, you know, how, you know, stress response creates the pain, chronic pain,
of course,
etc.
Yeah, I mean, let's just start off with this. You mentioned that's one of the reasons that people, and we'll get into it a little bit later about how we can have dysfunction but no pain, or this or that. But why pain is such a big issue, and why does that take us into, or take so many people into the doctor's office? Well, I was just researching this, and over 20% of the world's population experiences chronic pain. 20%. So, I mean, I didn't do the math of how many millions and people that is, but just here in America, it's 70 million people are in pain every day. That's over 30%, or almost 30% of our population. And this is the one that struck me, because you mentioned, like it's accepted as just getting older. In America, chronic pain is the #1 cause of long-term disability. And I know for you, for me, we were just talking about it off air, like the whole anti-aging longevity crew disabled is like a 4-letter word for me, disability. I never want to be disabled or on disability. So when we think chronic pain, because, you know, I have patients, I'm sure you do too, where it's not just like, you know what, my wrist hurt for like a half a second when I did this 3 weeks ago. It's not that. It's migraines, it's headaches, it's these recurrent chronic conditions that can either, cause like debilitating pain, or long periods of just honestly annoying, nagging type things. And I know this from my own personal experience. It sounds weird to say, but I had, quote, chronic pain in the form of migraine headaches. That was my body's physical response and even neurological response to the stress I was putting on my body that I didn't even know I was doing, and so many people don't. Well, I say funny. When I say funny, I always have to preface this. I mean ironic or sad. It's just the word that I use. I've always used. It's funny that my chronic pain first exhibited itself in the 8th grade. So I was 13 years old. And I still remember the first time I got a migraine headache. I didn't know what it was back then. I was sitting in social studies class and I was reading from a book, and all of a sudden I got these spots like that, or it's called an aura, where it's like if you look at the sun for too long, or just look at a light or the sun, you get that spot. Well, that's what was happening, but it goes away. You blink, it goes away, but it didn't in this case. I'm like, what the heck? I'm trying to read. I'm like fixing my eyes and thinking it's something there, trying to breathe. And then a few minutes later, the spots were still there. And then my hand started getting tingly, numbness and tingling. And then about 10 minutes after that, the teacher asked me a question. And I remember I couldn't answer her because I could think, and I was thinking, but I was so confused. And the way I describe it was my tongue felt too big for my mouth. Like I just, the words wouldn't come out. So, I mean, looking back in those symptoms, it almost sounds like I was having a stroke, which migraines do have that appearance sometimes. But after those symptoms, that's when I got the headache. Some people get just like that debilitating pounding headache. I had that aura first and then got the migraine. Like I said, I didn't know what it was back then. All I know is I went back, I went home and slept, and, after a few days, it got better. I'm sure my mom gave me some Tylenol and these over-the-counter medications. And that's one of those, but I like to consider myself lucky that I've never been on any prescription medications for any migraine headaches, for any, yes, I had knee surgery 10, 12 years ago. I took some short-term after that. For those, again, acute responses, those short-term, yes, I will if the pain is too much, but I will never, I never have, and I never will take pain medication chronically, because that's honestly, that's the number one treatment for pain, chronic pain of any kind, low back pain, neuropathy, headaches. You name it. These are the accepted norms that people use without knowing that, they not only can be terribly addictive, right? That's one of the things we hear, but they affect us physically, affect us mentally. I actually just had a couple of strategy sessions today with some clients, and there's something special that I do for, well, not just my community, but the world is, they can get my advice on things. And guess what? That's what they do, is they take pain medications. They think that it's common. They go to another doctor, they take this, they give them that. And we'll get into that today too. It's not just one thing that caused my migraines, that caused people chronic pain.
So two components. One, thank you so much for offering those strategy calls. I'm going to put that in the show notes. So Dr. Ryan is so graciously offering What the Health listeners and viewers a strategy call with him around if you are suffering chronic pain and want to have expert advice. So thank you for that. Second one is on even the over-the-counter NSAIDs, right? I recently saw a patient after surgery. He's prescribed some pretty big opioids, which he didn't really want to take. But then he was also on 2,400 milligrams a day for 10 days of an NSAID. And that is that's the highest dose one can take. And what happened was now that stimulated. So number one, 44,000 people die of just aspirin use a year in the United States. We think that, because I can buy it at 7-Eleven or in the corner store, that it must be safe. If that was a natural product, they would take that off the market. That's 44,000 people a year on just using an over-the-counter med. But then the secondary consequences of that is he now has gastritis, possibly a stomach gastric ulcer. It's 8 weeks after his surgery. Now we're dealing with the secondary components of a properly prescribed medication for pain. And man, it's just it's the wrong route to be going here.
Yeah. And you mentioned the 44,000 with aspirin. That's not counting all the other NSAIDs. And with opioids, like prescription opioids, Vicodin, OxyContin, those types of ones, what I read in 2019, it was 50,000 deaths. 50,000. That was overdose deaths. Probably not even in addition to like normal prescribing of those.
Right.
So yeah, it's a lot of I'm sure your listeners know that's why they're listening to What the Health, which I love that title. That's such a great title of a podcast. Is that they don't address the actual causes or solutions of the actual pain in this case, right? And that's why I created a system over the last 20 years that addresses that using healthy lifestyle principles and basics. No matter what avenue you go throughout life, I believe you're always going to come back to the basics.
Yeah.
If you go the medical route where you're just prescribed drug after drug, which, you know, I feel like on all these interviews that we do, Dr. Greg, that we always have to preface it saying drugs aren't bad, right? Just like not all supplements are good. Right. It's just how we use them and when we use them.
Exactly. You know, I kind of say that as like on the continuum of care, one of my monikers is where East meets West naturally. Right. So obviously my bias is towards more natural products, but I never want to limit somebody's options in care. I just find it's not the starting spot. We should not start over on that edge of the spectrum because there are secondary consequences that we don't think about up front. And when you're in pain, we don't really want to limit, options there, right? I mean, it is significant, and that's why we're talking about it today.
And going even back to the, people just taking over the counters or NSAIDs. Yeah. And looking at this, and I've even changed my stance on ice and heat over the last probably year. So I'm again still learning this stuff, in adapting based on actual science and what it does, the body's response. Because before, if you had an acute injury, I would say, put ice on it 15, 20 minutes, really numb it. Now I like to use ice more for pain control, not to numb or to shut down the circulation. Yes, there might be some inflammation, which can be helpful in a short-term response, but I like the word circulation because we want to get the circulation going where, okay, put ice on it for 5 minutes. If like you sprain your ankle or hurt your back, sprain your back, your shoulder, ice it for like 5 minutes, just, to decrease the pain, then put some heat on it and it gets that like pumping response. So pain control. All right, let's bring some circulation back in and clear out the stuff and then bring some other good oxygen and nutrients and antioxidants to the area to help it heal. Yeah. Whereas like with NSAIDs, again, it's been shown over and over again how it hampers and can slow the actual healing process. So then you think you're fine and then you re-injure it and you keep re-injuring it. And then what happens is, like, let's take the low back, for example, or you sprain your low back, sprain some ligaments, or you even tear a little part of the disc. Well, now, and if you have pain for that, what a lot of times the doctors recommend, instead of taking maybe some supplements, maybe drinking some water, omega-3s, things to build the body back up, NSAIDs, try this, Tylenol, or even opioids to help deal with the pain. Well, now, okay, I feel pretty good, or even cortisone shots. I feel pretty good. It's not really healing anything because we always have to get into what are the things, not just thing that caused it. And that's one thing I want to help people to understand is don't stress out about trying to figure out what caused this. Why did I get this? Right. You know what? I'm going to go through like this analogy that I use, an example that I use in a second, called the stress bucket or the threat bucket analogy, which I absolutely love. As people get older and they might get these, they might get these aches and pains, they might equate it to, oh, it's because I'm getting older. Just like a patient of mine said on Tuesday, actually, a couple of days ago, was getting old ain't for sissies. I'm like, I gave her a break. Usually, you're right. Getting old, I would say getting frail, getting older is different than getting old. That has that moniker, that connotation of, yes, you're breaking down, and you don't have to break down. And we'll go through like the system that I use, like the basics. I call them ABCD. pain to performance, be your own guarantee type thing, where we're in control of all these, but we'll get into that after I go over the stress bucket analogy. If you're ready for that, or if you got something to add, Dr. Greg?
Stress bucket analogy. Yeah.
Well, here's the deal. And this goes into the whole brain and neurology of it too, right? Is you need to think about your brain especially. So your brain and nervous system is constantly evaluating and interpreting every single sensory input that comes into your body or onto your body, or that's already in your body. So from the outside world and also our inner world. So it's constantly asking itself every second of every day, is this safe or is it not safe? So if it's not safe, well, let's go over here. If it's not safe, that's the number one priority of our brain and nervous system, is to keep us alive, right? Mm-hmm. So if something's not safe, that is always going to take precedence over something that is for performance. All right. So that's where we go on the pain to performance continuum. So and it's not just something that you're thinking about, like, okay, is this microphone safe or not? Okay, it's safe. No, this is unconsciously it's doing this. So 400 billion messages every second come into your brain, is evaluating a nervous system and finding out if is it safe or not. So there's a filtering process that those 400 billion messages go through to, I'm not going to go through that whole thing, to know which 7 of them that you need to pay attention to. Pain is one of those 7 things. So in that filtering process, something that's unsafe for your body might get filtered out because it's not severe enough yet until it causes that pain. So keep that in mind. Your brain is doing this. Your nervous system is constantly evaluating and interpreting. I like that word, interpreting. Is it safe or not? So based on it, is it safe or not? So that input interpretation leads to an output. And that output can either be a survival-based protective mechanism like pain, or it could be more performance. But remember, it can't do both at the same time. So with the stress bucket, so I leave that as a preamble to the whole stress bucket analogy. So it's constantly taking and evaluating what's happening in your world and then also inside. So our thoughts as well. Because it could be a real stress or a real threat, or a perceived threat or stress. It doesn't have to actually be real. And in our world today, we probably have more perceived threats than we actually do real. And that just makes our brain go nuts with that without even knowing it. But it creates these nerve pathways which get laid down, and now something triggers it and it sets you off.
Yeah, gosh. And that's not even talking about folks that had trauma underlying that, right? So they're already primed for an exaggerated response in those pathways. And then you can see how we get into this chronic disease illness pattern that we've got.
Absolutely. You mentioned that, past trauma, past injuries. So all of these stressors, not just when I say stress, that's why I like the word stressors. Yeah. Because when I say stress, people think, well, I'm not, I don't think mental stress or emotional stress.
Right.
It's physical stress, chemical stress, mental stress, emotional stress, relational stress, spiritual stress. So all these, what they do is they place drops in the bucket. So think about your brain as the bucket. Okay. Yep. So as that water level rises from all these stresses, your brain is thinking, you know what? I don't like that water level getting up there, because as it starts to rise, and if it gets to the top, it thinks it's going to die. Like, essentially, that's what it is. Now, it can handle a lot, but it wants to get rid of that stress or get rid of that water. We're obviously using that as an example. Right. So what are these different stressors? Go back to that. What's putting water in your bucket? Well, standard American diet, high sugary food, nutrition, toxicities, whether it's biotoxins, environmental toxins, heavy metals, deficiencies is a big one as well. Not just with nutrients, micronutrients, antioxidants, but also the nerve signals going throughout your body, that your brain communicates with the rest of your body through your spine and posture. And then also breathing, not enough oxygen or even not enough carbon dioxide to get the oxygen to dissociate from the red blood cells into your body and into the tissues. So deficiencies in that way. Then we're talking, again, the actual mental stress. We're talking, poor fitness, poor posture, poor sleep hygiene, and medications. So the medications that we take actually causes stress on our body. So these are, remember, these are adding drops to the bucket.
Yep.
We haven't even gotten to the pain part yet. All
Yeah.
right. So those are the stressors. So as that water level gets up there, your brain wants to get rid of it. Here's how it does it. Here's how it tries to do it, or tries to give you a response to let you know, hey, red flag over here, I need some help. So about 2/3 of the way up that bucket, there's a little spout or a spigot or an overflow valve, if you will. So once it reaches that level, it starts to let not just the stress out, but lets the response out. It's your body's protective response against these getting too high to where it thinks you're going to die. And what that response is that the major one is pain, physical pain. That's how it tells you. So that could be immobility, inflexibility. Man, I'm getting tight. Oh, getting up, from the chair and stiff and tight. It could be, I like the acronym PAIN to go along with it. So physical, so pain, anxiety. So that's more of the emotional responses. I is inflammation or infection, more of like chemical responses. And then N is negative mindset, which is the emotional, mental responses too. And there's different ones underneath that. But for our purposes, we're talking about pain, or like the physical response of pain.
Sure.
So that's how your brain gives you chronic pain, essentially, because it's trying to say, hey, help me. So fibromyalgia, headaches, migraines. So when I had my migraines, it's like, pay attention. But if you don't, if we keep just throwing, different like medications at it, or not addressing the different causes, when people ask me, why do I have pain? Say, why shouldn't you have pain? With the lifestyle, depends on what kind of lifestyle that you've had and you've been leading. Why do I get sick? I'm like, well, why shouldn't you get sick? What are we doing nutritionally? What are we doing for our mindset? What are we doing for our like exercise? What are we doing for our sleep? What are we doing for our posture? And it's not just not doing, but that is. So the great news is this, is that water level and that spout is adaptable. So we can increase the threshold with which, we can increase that threshold to where you don't feel that pain, or that's not a response. We don't want to just cover it up and mask it, because that would be like, okay, let's make the bucket bigger so we can handle more water, but not really addressing any of those stressors coming into our body, or learning how to mitigate, like counteract. I love that word, counteract those stresses with healthy lifestyle principles like nutrition, sleep, exercise, posture and spine health, and mindset training. Yeah. And breathing. I didn't even mention breathing. That's a huge one.
I recommend don't stop that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll get into it now.
Yeah.
When I created this system, I was thinking, okay, what are people doing, or what does almost everybody do that they do because they're alive, and they think because they're alive, they're doing it correctly. So the first one was thinking. Yeah. They think, well, it can't be the mental aspect of it. It can't be my alignment or my attention or my awareness. And then the second one is breathing. And with breathing and chronic pain, those go together, because your diaphragm, what did I just read? 60 to 80% of the people who are in chronic pain, or actually even the population, breathe incorrectly, have dysfunctional breathing patterns. And by that means they're chest breathers, they're mouth breathers, instead of using the diaphragm. And the diaphragm is important with postural and spinal control. And so that's what I mean by that. People have this mistaken concept that, okay, I'm alive, I'm breathing, I must be doing it right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm also, okay, I know how to eat. I must be doing it right. But it can get dysfunctional with these stresses that we're placing into our body, just like we can get pain. And those two go together intimately.
Wow. Yeah. And those are like so basic, right? We just overlook them of, well, give me the fancy pill to get like, just turn off the signal. And what the system that you're putting together is so foundational of creating such a strong foundation for people. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, I hesitate sometimes to say foundation or like fundamentals, but here's the deal is everybody comes back to the basics.
Yeah.
When everything else is broken down, especially when you're in chronic pain, a lot of times we have to rebuild that. Think about like athletes. I know you and I are both big sports fans, right? And when we injure ourselves, or think about an athlete that injures themselves, or even, again, anybody listening to this, tearing up a knee. I tore my ACL 12 years ago. So I had to rebuild that, go back to the basics. Not like I could start running and jumping right after the surgery or right after I tore it. You have to build it back up. And when we're talking about chronic pain, it's the same type of thing. If you're in chronic pain where you're just debilitated, you feel like nothing's ever going to work. We have to work on your mindset. We have to work on your breathing, your conditioning of your body, and also your sleep, because those are the main things that I've found that work with this. So we'll go through these. So this is going from that pain to performance system, or the pain to performance system to so you can get to that high performance.
Sure.
So I broke it down into A, B, C, D, because I'm like, what is basic? What's not? What isn't? As what's more basic than the alphabet?
Yeah.
So A, I already alluded to a little bit. It stands for aligned. Basically, align your attention with your intention. I say cool part because it's amazing, because this is something just over the last, again, 5 or 6 years, I would say, that I've really gotten into, and it's mindset. And that word can get up so many different types of images and woo. But the amazing part is it is rooted in science. I mean, we have a whole, like, neurology of coaching. I've went through neurology of mindset, and how the things that we tell ourselves, the stories that we tell ourselves, maybe not consciously, but unconsciously, that we've experienced and had influence on, that create our perceptions and our expectations for the world, they direct our action habits and behaviors without you even knowing it. So they did this, again, this is just one of the studies they did. They did a study and survey of 2.5 million Americans and healthy behaviors. So it found that a positive mindset, like how you feel about yourself and how you identify yourself as a person, is directly linear related to your healthy actions and habits and behaviors. What that means is we're constantly trying to tell people, as doctors, as health practitioners, as whoever, as even parents to your kids, do this, do that. I will tell you this: when somebody tells me to do something, a lot of times it doesn't stick. You might do it for a couple days, but if you're not seeing it right away, it's because seeing results or whatever you want to say. The doing comes after, I call it the whoing. Who are you, who you're being, your identity. And that's where the mindset training comes in, using it's the eliminate your limits 4-pillar system. So I'm a certified mindset specialist with that. And it's counting your wins, it's learning your language, reviewing your direction, and imagining your outcome. Now I go into these intimately on different I'm not going to go into it here, because I know we're
that's
on
a whole
time.
nother, right?
That's a whole nother one.
Podcast, right?
But just keep in mind, we have these unconscious stories that we tell ourselves, this internal dialogue. We're talking to ourselves, and don't think you're crazy if you're talking to yourself. We all do. Yes, we do. We're all having these internal stories, and that is driving our actions, habits, and behaviors. So it can drive it towards health and towards doing healthy things. And it's not just about the short term, it's about doing it for the long term. So then you can have whatever you want. to
I
have
love
that
that.
health and happiness.
What if we really did focus on our wins versus focusing on the failures? Like if we remembered all of the wins that we had, just tuning our awareness over to that is a major knowledge drop here on What the Health, folks. So I want to really highlight that on really record and capture your wins. This is something that I've been playing with lately. And, lo and behold, we're tuned, in, striving and trying to get improving and better. We kind of look at like, oh, the faults or the failures or, oh, I messed up there or there. But what if we tuned it to, wow, I really did an amazing there. This was great. This was a major win, and just record it down. At the end of the day, reflect on that, and it snowballs your winning. It's like winning begets winning.
Yes, it passively adapts your brain and how the myelin is laid down around those nerve pathways. You're exactly right. You said it perfectly. I will add one thing. It's not just the major wins. And I like even sometimes instead of counting your wins, because sometimes people think, well, I don't have any wins.
Right.
So no matter how bad your day is, there's always a win. But how you can even rephrase that is find the evidence. And that's the difference between positive affirmations and just thinking positive and actually finding the evidence. Yeah. If you're down and out, and it's the little things. It doesn't have to be a major win. We want to count all those little tiny wins. Like just the fact, if you're aware of, like if you say you don't have any wins, for example, just the fact that you're aware that you are trying to count your wins, that's a win. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about, how small it is, because when you're in pain and you're thinking there's nothing there, I'm never going to get better. There is, you say, well, I'm aware of, I'm thinking that, but count your wins is the best place to start. And that's, learning how to do that. That's the A part that I show my clients and my group how to do. Okay. Yep. So B is, can you guess what that is, Dr. Greg?
You hinted at it and you said it. Breathing. And I said, don't stop breathing. Yes.
So breathing, and it's that, again, thinking and breathing. That's essentially what A is thinking. Breathing is, I've been looking a lot at Patrick McEwen's work, The Breathing Cure. His book just came out, and The Oxygen Advantage. And also it's contrarian to a lot of what people, not contrarian, but it's not like the deep breaths. Yeah. It's almost, you want to make it light, slow, and deep. Because it affects your biochemistry that way better. By slowing it down, we're a country and world of chronic hyperventilators. We're over breathing. So we're breathing off. Honestly, I love it because it makes, again, scientific sense, and also it's backed up by the science. So light, biochemistry. We want to create almost like an air hunger, he calls it, where we want to breathe light because we want to make sure we have enough carbon dioxide in our body, in our blood, to dissociate the oxygen off of the red blood cells, because that's how it's called, the Bohr effect. It's a law, it's a scientific law. Yeah. It takes it off and into the tissues. So if we're chronically over breathing, and carbon dioxide has been vilified over the last, it really has. It's not, again, it's just like no food is good or bad, no drug is good or bad. It's how we use it and how it's used. Yeah. It's the same thing with breathing and carbon dioxide. So that's the light part. Slow. We want to slow it down. Most people are breathing anywhere from 12 to 20 breaths. And that's what I learned in school. Yeah. That's normal. Yeah. If we can get it to 6 breaths, that's what's been found to increase oxygenation, decrease pain, improve performance. And we're not over breathing. And the last one is deep. So LSD, but it's a different type of LSD. I like.
What's going on over there, Doc?
Yeah. So the D, so it's just a way for you to remember it.
Yes.
So the D is not, it's deep breathing. And I even had this confused before I heard him. It's not that deep doesn't mean big, because when you're anxious, when you're in pain, what do we tend to do? we tend to breathe deep and shallow,
Yeah.
right? Like, or sorry, big and shallow. So
Yeah.
and we over breathe. But deep is in the diaphragm, like deep in our belly. We want to use the diaphragm. So training yourself how to use the diaphragm. When you breathe in, the diaphragm pushes down, okay? And then can fill up the lower part of the lungs and get to the oxygen to the alveoli, where it can actually get the gas exchange between carbon dioxide and oxygen. All right.
Wow. Yeah.
And then when you breathe out, it's not like forcing it. It's just nice and easy exhales. Again, that is the base foundation of that. Then we work off of that.
I love that. So give me an example of the light component of the LSD.
Yeah, light. Thanks for, yes, because that one can get confusing. So when you breathe, and this is always through the nose.
Okay.
You always want to breathe through the nose. Light means, and it's hard to demonstrate this one.
Right.
There's a couple of different ways. The one that I love how he describes it and how I describe it to my patients and clients is you want to breathe so light that you can't even feel, or it's like you're trying not to move your nose hairs.
Oh, okay. That's the light. So it's not a forceful breath.
Right. It's not a,
so
it
is deep, but it's a slow,
yes, yeah,
light
yep.
breath. There you go.
Yeah. It's and with that, it reminded me too, we don't ever want to hear you breathing, like snoring, apnea.
Thank you for that.
The deep breaths. If it, like, there's a time and place for that, the hyperventilative type breathing, like the Wim Hof style.
Yeah.
But we have to retrain the actual appropriate, correct breathing pattern,
Right.
especially when people are in chronic pain, because that shuts off.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So what is your C?
C is a combination. That doesn't, sorry, I shouldn't say that. It's called conditioning your body.
Okay.
And it's a combination of nutrition. It's a combination of fitness and exercise and movement, and then also spinal health and posture. I put those all together. It's like physical conditioning of your body. And I'm going to hit on spine and posture because that is the most underlooked and undervalued part of health, performance, longevity. And I'm going to just spew off a couple different, basically quotes and findings from a different doctors. And it's not even chiropractic journals and doctors that are saying it. That's the awesome part about it. So I don't know if Rene Callier, he was a famous physiatrist, MD, University of USC, started the Department of Rehab there, and he passed away, I think 4 or 5 years ago. And he said, to live a long, active, energetic life, few things matter more than good posture.
Mm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yes, and he has written, I think 13 or 14 like musculoskeletal books. So yes, posture and spine is directly related to your health and disease, but so is conditioning your body. So with this health and disease in your spine, it's not just about pain.
Yeah.
All right. That's what, being a chiropractic doctor for the last 21 years, that's, a lot of times patients won't tell me, it just happened this week, other issues that they're having because it's not a pain related thing.
Right.
But your spinal cord is a direct extension of your brain, which your spinal cord is inside your spine. So another finding from Spine Journal and the American Journal of Geriatric Population, the Geriatric Society. This was in the early 2000s. What they found was, regardless of any other stressor, as I explained it before, a posture of forward head posture, especially, and even more, this kyphosis, where you're like that poor posture going forward, that alone is a predictor of taking up to 15 years off your life.
So that is what you just described there is tech neck, right?
Yes. Yep.
So everybody pay attention. And when we're talking longevity, that again, another big item of like, for crying out loud, this posture. Oh, I'm looking at my phone. And I'm actually doing it during this because I'm taking notes with you. And
but again, we're all the problem is we get stuck in that posture for too long.
Right.
how do we counteract it? Well, we counteract it with ABCD, these principles that we're doing. And, obviously there's different nuances to each of these, but this is how we take water out of the bucket. This is how we prevent ourselves from taking medications and depending on medications for our pain and our getting healthy, even though that's a misnomer. We're never going to get healthy taking drugs. Because if I ask you this, or ask your listeners this, what is that, in your bathroom? I don't know if they have them there anymore. That mirror cabinet above your sink. What do they call that?
Medicine cabinet.
Medicine cabinet. So let me ask you this. Are you healthy if that is empty or if it's full?
Empty.
Yeah. Right there. So just a little, a little side note there.
Right.
So yes, that is the issue, is just the repetition that we are in that posture. And yes, that can cause pain, but it can also cause poor breathing, because now I can't take a deep breath. The lungs aren't inflating. I'm crushing, I'm using these descriptive words, crushing my internal organs, and they're not going to be able to function very well. Our muscles, it's not the muscles. I'll tell you this, the muscles are not the cause of this. It is the ligaments of the spine. Your spine is your posture. Again, in general, that's what we found over the last 20 some years.
Heck yeah.
So the last one, D is deep sleep.
Oh, I love it.
So deep sleep, and why I say deep sleep, because that is when healing happens. That's when your ligaments, your spine, your muscles, that's when they can repair and recover. And also the brain too. And if we're not getting some deep sleep regularly, then it's going to, again, snowball into more dysfunction. Remember when I said your brain has to interpret 400 billion messages coming in all at once? It's got a lot to work on. So it's not going to tell you the first time that you're in this posture or you have poor sleep, it's probably not going to affect you and give you a pain signal, because it's not to that level yet. It's the repetition with which you do that. So if we've been doing it repetitively for a while, something that's causing a stressor on our body or in our body, what can you expect to counteract it? Taking one pill or potion or drug, or even one supplement, finding that magic bullet?
Do you have that?
And that's, I wear these special socks where, it activates this.
Magnets. Yes.
Yeah. Again, they all have their place.
Yeah.
But in a healthy lifestyle, it depends on what your goals are. If you want to live like healthy to 100 years old and not be on any medications and not be influenced and learn how to handle the stress in your life, then we're going to have to do something else besides just the medical route. And that's where these healthy lifestyle principles come in.
I love it. What is your recommendation on how do people know if they're getting deep sleep?
Well, I have an Aura ring.
Right.
That's that right there.
You're the same type of motion there.
Yeah. But yes, it's the Aura ring. It's all these. I like the Aura ring because it's not Bluetooth. It's, Bluetooth isn't on that. It's just storing the data. Then I download it on my phone or activate my phone the next day for 5 minutes to put the data to see it. Fitbits, they have them, Apple Watches. I'm not a huge fan just because I don't know, I haven't done the research, but people I trust, Lloyd Burrell.
Yes.
The five, who else was the other guy? Josh Jasal.
Uh-huh.
These guys have done the research and I trust them. So I want to limit that, because guess what? The more I can limit what's going into my bucket, the more I can have maybe a piece of pizza or a whole pizza. Maybe I can have it, or I can have it, but I have to deal with the consequences of whatever happens.
Right.
It's not a mystery of if I don't get the sleep, or if my nutrition isn't great, or if I miss a couple of workouts, or if I don't lay on my spinal remodeling blocks that I do,
So for folks that are tracking it, is there a certain percentage of deep sleep that
deep sleep is about 15 to 20, I think 20 to 25% of your time sleeping should be in deep sleep.
Love it. Yeah, minimally, that's what I also tell folks, at least 20%. You're above 20% or better, you're doing really well.
Yeah.
Why is that important? And what that's a foundational piece here on a pain protocol for you. So that's a big player. So why that piece?
Well, because if you are, and I've been using this word lately, is deficit. If you're in pain, you're in a deficit. And I use the example of if you've gone bankrupt, like monetarily wise. So let's say you had $50,000 in your bank account, and then, so you can do things because you have that leeway. You're not in a deficit. Yeah. You don't have to build it up if that's your ultimate goal, to be at that $50,000 mark. But let's say you lose $40,000 of it and you're at 10,000. Well, now we have to build that deficit. We have to decrease that deficit, save up a little bit more.
Yeah.
Not go on vacation as much, right? Or at all. Maybe work a little bit more, find ways to build that up. And that's what these lifestyle principles are. With deep sleep, that really increases the savings, because it's a time where you're like 8 to 10 hours. If you're in chronic pain, again, I'd say a huge priority if you want to get out of pain, because that's 8 to 10 hours where you are sleeping, where your body's not moving, your body's regenerating, the neurotransmitters, the hormones are resetting themselves. And it's, what did I say when I went back to this? When you're alive, what are the things that we do that we think we're doing right because we're alive? Well, I sleep, I'm not dead when I wake up, so I must be doing it right. But that's not the case. Yeah. It's how to optimize. I bet people are sleeping, but now this also goes with the breathing part of it. If you're not breathing correctly, and sleep apnea and not breathing through your nose, same thing. You're not getting to that quality of deep sleep either.
Yeah. So
these all play off of each other.
That's awesome. Thank you. That's a really good flow and a good framework for folks to really, kind of settle into, especially in a chronic pain component, because it's very holistic. It's not just the nerves. Like, here we got Dr. Ryan, the chiropractor. You think, oh, he's just going to adjust me or deal with my nutrition. It's like, no, it's a complete system, treating a whole dynamic being moving through time and space. And that's why I love talking with you. Yeah. Thanks for sharing the knowledge and the research and really your outline. I love that. It's a good flow. In the last couple minutes, any final things that you would like to share with folks?
So it's to be simple and consistent. It always wins. It always works. Too many times we've talked about that. We're looking for that one thing, that one reason, that one thing, that one why of why do I feel like this? What works? What doesn't? And you might find something that works for a month, 2 months, but as your body and brain heal, as it evolves, it might not work anymore, because now you need that next level, and maybe it doesn't work. I'm not saying don't try to, I'm not saying obviously to give up. I don't want you giving up, but to jump from doctor to doctor, you want to find somebody who resonates with you, who, is going to honestly hold you accountable too, to that simple and consistent process. I have this Facebook group, which everybody is free to join. It's called Be Your Own Guarantee. You can, if you're on Facebook, you can look it up. And I will say the same things over and over again, because how many times have you heard something once, especially with your health and getting rid of pain and these healthy lifestyle principles? Maybe you remember it, but do you know it? Is it part of your life?
Yeah.
I know for me, it's taken multiple times. And the last basically stat I'll give to you, the research has shown when you're trying to build a new habit or create a new routine, you will fail 7 to 12 times before you actually get it.
Yeah.
Here's going to go back to count your wins. Every time you fail, that is a win.
Yeah.
Because you are closer to that 12 times of failing before that 13th time or that 7th or 8th.
Framing. Yeah, that's awesome.
So I just got the chills with that. That's
yes.
And I love doing the podcasts and speaking, because this helps me to remind myself of it too.
Yeah.
I'm my own client. I'm my own patient. Sometimes we're our worst clients and patients. So
I think I so agree. It's like the things that we're saying to the folks that trust their health with us are, I feel so fortunate because I get to hear it so many times and I'm still working on it. Right. So it's like those messages that the provider actually needs to hear, we're the ones saying them, which is great. It's a good setup, really good gig. Again, thank you so much, everybody listening. Check out Dr. Ryan. He's giving you a really nice opportunity here with a strategy call. He is very prolific. He produces some of the best content on the internet for your health. So you can tune in, get the support that you need. And if you got anything out of the show, think of 2 loved ones right now. And I want you to share the show with them and tell them why, what made you think of them. And just do it now. Like, don't delay, because life is going to happen once you stop listening. So just share the show. Also, go out and leave us that 5-star review on the review site. So whatever your favorite podcast platform is, get out there, put it out there, because this is why I created the platform, What the Health. We are bringing you the information that you need, your loved one needs, and your community needs. And we need it desperately now. So share the love and get the word out. Get the word out. This is the Contact Talk Radio. We are here Tuesdays from 2 to 3 Pacific time. We will see you next week. Thanks for tuning in.